I'm Blaze Turner, 32 years old, and I never thought my own birthday would become the day my family betrayed me. The house I'd spent years paying for, the one place I called my sanctuary after supporting them through everything, suddenly wasn't mine anymore. They stood there smiling as I opened that envelope containing an eviction notice, claiming legal ownership of my property. Little did they know what I had discovered about their own precarious living situation. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Growing up in Chicago's Ravenswood neighborhood, I never imagined my own family would one day try to steal my house from under me. Our brick two-story with its small front yard was nothing fancy, but it represented stability in a childhood that rarely had any. My parents, Thomas and Sandra Turner, always struggled financially. Dad worked construction when jobs were available, which wasn't often enough. Mom picked up retail shifts while juggling caring for me and my younger sister Allison. We weren't poor enough for significant assistance, but never comfortable enough to stop worrying about money. The tension over bills filled our home more reliably than heat during Chicago winters. By 16, I started working weekends at the local grocery store, giving most of my paycheck to my parents. It started with just this month to cover an unexpected car repair, then became my unspoken responsibility. While my friends saved for cars and dates, I handed over envelope after envelope to my father, who took it without thanks but with plenty of comments about family duty. Allison, 4 years younger, somehow escaped these expectations. My parents insisted she focus on school and social activities, preserving her childhood in ways they never protected mine. I didn't resent her for it then. She was my baby sister, the one person who showed genuine excitement when I came home, who drew me pictures and saved me cookies from her school bake sales. College acceptance letters arrived during my senior year, including one from Northwestern with a partial scholarship. The night I told my parents, Dad slammed his hand on the table. "How exactly do you think we'll manage without your contribution? You planning to abandon your family for some fancy degree?" I ended up at the local community college, transferring later to University of Illinois Chicago, working nearly full-time throughout. Every semester was a battle between classes, work, and my parents' increasingly demanding financial needs. Somehow, I graduated with a finance degree, sleep-deprived, but determined. Landing my first job at Meridian Financial felt like finally catching a breath after years underwater. The entry-level position wasn't glamorous, but the salary seemed astronomical compared to my previous income. I rented a tiny studio apartment, my first space truly my own. For 6 blissful months, I built a life independent from my family's constant needs. Then came the call that changed everything. Mom sobbing that they'd received a foreclosure notice, 3 months behind on mortgage payments. Dad too proud to call me himself. The bank giving them 30 days to vacate the home I'd grown up in. I still remember the sinking feeling as I contacted a real estate agent. At 27, I'd been saving for my own home someday, not expecting to buy my parents' house to save them from homelessness. The closing process was rushed and stressful. My name went on the deed, my signature on the mortgage, with a verbal agreement that my parents and sister could continue living there while contributing to expenses. Legal ownership was mine, but I stayed in my studio apartment, giving my family space while providing financial stability. I visited weekly for dinner, helped with maintenance, and continued supporting them when unexpected expenses arose. Despite owning the house, I still felt like the dutiful son rather than the landlord. 5 years passed this way. I worked my way up at Meridian, eventually becoming a senior financial analyst. My parents never quite acknowledged the sacrifice I'd made, treating my purchase of their home as something I owed them, rather than the significant favor it was. My relationship with each family member had its own complicated dynamic. Dad remained distant, accepting my help with a mixture of resentment and entitlement. Mom expressed occasional gratitude but quickly returned to expecting more. Allison, now working as a sales associate at a boutique downtown, had grown increasingly materialistic, constantly comparing her lifestyle to friends with wealthier parents. 3 months before my 32nd birthday, I received a substantial promotion at work. For the first time, I allowed myself to envision a future focused on my own dreams, perhaps buying a condo downtown, traveling, maybe even dating seriously. I'd spent my entire adult life supporting my family. Maybe now I could finally start living for myself. That's when I first noticed changes in my family's behavior. Phone calls went unanswered. When I visited for our usual Sunday dinner, conversations would halt abruptly when I entered the room. Multiple times, I arrived to find unfamiliar cars in the driveway and strangers leaving as I pulled up. "Just friends," Mom would say, or "someone from church," Dad would mutter. Allison avoided eye contact entirely. 2 weeks before my birthday, I stopped by, unexpectedly after work, to drop off a new coffee maker for my mom. Through the living room window, I saw my parents sitting at the dining table with a man in a suit, papers spread between them. When I knocked, there was a flurry of activity. Papers hastily gathered and tucked into a briefcase. The man introduced himself as Jackson Davis, brushing past me with a curt nod as he left. "Tax consultant," Dad explained. Though tax season had ended months ago, something felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what. When I mentioned celebrating my upcoming birthday, they seemed unusually enthusiastic, insisting on hosting a party at the house. "We want to do something special this year," Mom said, patting my hand with uncharacteristic affection. I left that night with an uneasy feeling that something significant was happening behind my back. If only I'd trusted that instinct more. My 32nd birthday dawned bright and clear. One of those perfect Chicago spring days when the city shakes off winter's grip and everyone walks a little lighter. I woke up feeling optimistic, grateful for my recent promotion, and excited to spend time with family. I arrived at my parents' house, the house I legally owned, around noon. The driveway was already filled with cars, including my Uncle Gerald's luxury sedan. The front door stood open, balloons tied to the mailbox. "There he is," Mom called as I walked in, rushing to hug me with unusual enthusiasm. Dad actually stood up from his recliner to clap me on the shoulder. Allison, looking especially polished in a new outfit I hadn't seen before, kissed my cheek and handed me a glass of champagne. "Bit early for this, isn't it?" I laughed, accepting the glass. "It's a special day," she replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The house had been cleaned thoroughly, decorations hanging from the ceiling, and a happy birthday banner stretched across the living room wall. The dining table was laden with my favorite foods: Mom's lasagna, garlic bread, and the chocolate cake she'd made for every birthday since I was a child. Uncle Gerald approached with his new fiancée, a woman I'd only met once before. "Happy birthday, nephew," he said, though something in his expression seemed strained. "You remember Jasmine?" I nodded politely. Jasmine smiled back, but there was uncertainty in her eyes, like she wasn't sure she should be there. More relatives arrived. Cousins I rarely saw. My dad's sister from Milwaukee. Even my grandfather, who usually avoided family gatherings. Everyone seemed overly cheerful, conversations too loud, laughter slightly forced. After lunch, Mom clinked her glass for attention. "Time for presents," she announced, guiding me to the armchair typically reserved for Dad. Everyone gathered around, forming a semicircle that suddenly felt more like an audience than family. Dad handed me a small stack of wrapped gifts. A tie from my aunt, golf balls from a cousin, a gift card from Grandpa. Standard, impersonal presents from people who didn't know me well. Then Mom placed a simple white envelope in my hands with a flourish. "This is from all of us," she said. "Your father, Allison, and me." Her voice carried an edge of excitement I couldn't interpret. The room grew silent as I opened the envelope, every eye focused on my reaction. Inside was no birthday card, but a stack of official-looking documents. I pulled them out, confused, scanning the legal language, and struggling to understand. My confusion turned to disbelief as the words registered. Notice of eviction. My eyes moved to the property address. My house. The house where we were currently sitting. My name was listed as the recipient, not the owner. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Dad leaned forward, a smile stretching across his face. "Well, son, we've been doing some research. Turns out, when you bought this house, there was a technical error in the deed transfer. The property wasn't properly cleared from our names before being assigned to yours." Mom jumped in. "Our friend Jackson Davis, he's a real estate attorney, he found it. The house is still legally ours. Always has been." Allison couldn't contain her smirk. "You have 30 days to vacate. That's generous considering." I stared at them, waiting for someone to laugh, to shout "just kidding," and reveal the real gift. But the seconds ticked by with only expectant smiles from my parents and sister. "You can't be serious," I finally managed. "I paid for this house. I have the mortgage statements, the closing documents, faulty paperwork," Dad said dismissively. Jackson explained it all. Something about improper notarization and missing signatures from the original owners. Technically, we never stopped being the legal owners. Uncle Gerald shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Other family members looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks or the pattern on the carpet. "I've been paying the mortgage for 5 years," I said, my voice strengthening with indignation. "I've put over $200,000 into this property, and we appreciate your contribution," Mom said, as if she were thanking me for bringing dessert to dinner. "Consider it back rent for all those years you lived here growing up." The casual cruelty of her statement stunned me into silence. Allison leaned forward. "We've already spoken with a realtor. The neighborhood has really gone up in value since you bought it. We're going to make a significant profit." "And do what with it?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well," Dad said, "your mother and I have always wanted to travel. Maybe get a place in Florida for winters. Allison has her eye on starting a boutique." "With my money," I clarified. "Family property," Dad corrected, "which stays with the family." I looked around the room at the relatives who had come to witness my humiliation. Some had the decency to look ashamed, but others seemed almost entertained by the drama unfolding. "You all knew about this?" I asked the room at large. No one answered directly, but their averted gazes told me everything. I stood up, documents clutched in my hand. "This isn't legal. This isn't right." "It's all perfectly legal," Dad said. "Jackson made sure of that. You can ask him yourself if you don't believe us." He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out to me. I didn't take it. "You're stealing my house. After everything I've done for this family." "Don't be so dramatic," Mom sighed. "You're doing well at your job. You can find another place easily." "We're giving you 30 days, Allison repeated. "Some evictions only give 3. I looked at the birthday cake, the presents, the decorations. This elaborate setup, this gathering of witnesses, had all been orchestrated to maximize my shock and minimize my ability to respond. They had planned my humiliation down to the last detail, without another word. I walked out, leaving behind the documents, the gifts, and the family who had just betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. I got into my car and drove. No destination in mind, just needing to put distance between myself and the house I'd thought was mine. Hours later, I found myself checked into a hotel downtown, staring at the city skyline through the window, trying to process what had happened. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from colleagues wishing me happy birthday, unaware that my world had just imploded. I turned it off and sat in silence, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. That first night in the hotel room remains one of the worst of my life. Sleep evaded me completely as my mind replayed the afternoon's events on endless loop. The smug expressions on my family's faces, the carefully orchestrated audience, the cold, calculated nature of their betrayal. Every sacrifice I'd made for them flashed before me in vivid detail. The college fund I'd abandoned to help with bills. The countless weekends and evenings worked instead of building friendships or relationships. The promotion I'd turned down 3 years ago because it would have required relocation, leaving them without my support. For 15 years, I'd prioritized their needs above my own, culminating in the purchase of their house to save them from foreclosure. And this was how they repaid me. Morning came with no relief. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. My boss, James, expressed concern, but didn't press for details. I spent that day in a fog, barely leaving the hotel room, ordering room service I couldn't eat. By the second day, shock began giving way to practicality. I needed to understand exactly what had happened and what my options were. I called Morgan Wright, a lawyer I'd met through work events, and scheduled an urgent consultation. Morgan's office was a haven of calm professionalism, with none of the emotional chaos I'd been drowning in. She listened intently as I explained the situation, occasionally taking notes. "Let me see any documentation you have," she said when I finished. I passed over the mortgage statements, property tax records, and closing documents I'd retrieved from my apartment. After reviewing everything carefully, she looked up with a frown. "This is unusual. The documentation for your purchase appears complete. But without seeing what your family is claiming about notarization errors, I can't give you a definitive answer. So they might be right? They could just take my house?" My voice cracked slightly. "Not necessarily. Property law is complex. Technical errors don't automatically invalidate ownership, especially after years of established payments and occupancy evidence." She tapped her pen against the desk. "I need to see exactly what they're claiming. Can you get copies of those eviction documents?" I nodded, though the thought of contacting my family made me physically ill. "In the meantime," she continued, "I'll start researching precedents for similar cases. Don't move out. Don't sign anything. And document all communication with your family." I left Morgan's office with a sliver of hope and a plan of action. Rather than confronting my family directly, I decided to investigate on my own first. Social media became my initial research tool. Scrolling through Allison's Instagram revealed posts from the past month, showcasing items that seemed beyond her sales associate salary. Designer shoes, expensive restaurant meals, and most tellingly, a brand new Audi she'd captioned. "New beginnings deserve new rides." My parents rarely used social media, but their friends weren't so discreet. Through mutual connections, I found photos of them touring model homes in Florida communities, with comments about upcoming retirement plans. The timeline aligned perfectly with their scheme to take my house. They'd been planning their new lives with money they hadn't yet stolen from me. Then came a crucial discovery through an unlikely source. My company managed properties throughout Chicago, including several wedding venues. Checking my work email after 3 days away, I found a vendor coordination message accidentally copied to all department heads. The subject: Gerald Turner, divided by Jasmine Davis wedding. My Uncle Gerald was marrying Jackson Davis's sister. The connection was undeniable. With renewed purpose, I dug deeper. Jackson Davis's law firm specialized in real estate transactions, but reviewing public records revealed something disturbing. His name appeared in 3 separate ethics complaints regarding questionable property transfers. All had been settled out of court. I needed more concrete evidence. Taking a calculated risk, I drove past my house during work hours, when I knew everyone would be out. Using my key, I quickly entered and searched for any documentation they might have left behind. In my father's desk drawer, I found notes in his handwriting about reversing property ownership and technical loopholes in transfer. Most damning was a rough calculation of expected profits from selling the house, with percentages allocated to each family member, including a fee for Jackson Davis. They'd planned to cut me out completely, profiting from my years of mortgage payments and the property's appreciation. I photographed everything and left before anyone returned, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and vindication. That evening, steeling myself for confrontation, I returned to the house. My parents and Allison were having dinner, their surprise at seeing me quickly masked by hostility. "You can't just walk in here," Dad said. "This isn't your house anymore. I have 30 days, remember?" I kept my voice level. "I came to collect some personal items." Mom waved dismissively toward the stairs. "Make it quick. We're having a family dinner." "Family," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "Interesting concept." Allison rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just business." "Is that what you call stealing from someone who saved you from homelessness? Business? You were always too trusting," she replied, examining her manicured nails. "Maybe this will teach you something about the real world." Their callousness confirmed what I'd already realized. These people weren't family in any meaningful sense of the word. They were opportunists who had used me for years and were now discarding me once they'd found a way to extract final value. I left without collecting anything, the confrontation having served its purpose. They showed no remorse, no hesitation, not even the courtesy of pretending their actions were justified by anything other than greed. Unable to face returning to an empty hotel room, I called my friend Anthony, explaining my situation in halting sentences. Without hesitation, he offered his spare bedroom for as long as I needed. "They can't get away with this," he said that night as we sat in his living room, a beer in hand that I couldn't bring myself to drink. "Legally, they might," I admitted. "Morgan isn't sure yet." Anthony shook his head. "Then you fight back another way. You're smarter than them, Blaze. And you've got something they don't." "What's that?" "Integrity, plus actual financial knowledge." He leaned forward. "Don't get mad. Get strategic." His words resonated, shifting something fundamental in my approach. I'd been reacting emotionally, overwhelmed by betrayal. It was time to start thinking clearly, to use the analytical skills that had advanced my career. If my family wanted to play hardball, they'd discover I was far from the easy target they assumed. The next morning, with renewed determination, I contacted Lauren Delaney, a private investigator recommended by Morgan Wright. Her office was small but efficient, and she listened to my story with professional detachment. "Family cases are always complicated," she said. "But what you're describing goes beyond typical disagreements. This sounds like a calculated scheme." I nodded. "That's exactly what it feels like. I need to know everything. How deep this goes. Who else is involved? What other plans they might have." Lauren took detailed notes, asked clarifying questions about each family member, and outlined her approach. "I'll start with public records, then move to financial investigation. Depending on what I find, we might need surveillance to document ongoing activities." The cost was significant, but I didn't hesitate. Understanding the full scope of their betrayal was worth every penny. While Lauren began her investigation, I returned to work, needing the distraction and normalcy. Colleagues noticed my subdued demeanor, but attributed it to fatigue from birthday celebrations. If only they knew. 3 days later, Lauren called with her initial findings. We met in a quiet coffee shop, away from both our offices. "Your father has a history of financial misconduct," she began, sliding a folder across the table. "Nothing that resulted in criminal charges, but I found 5 civil suits from former business associates claiming he defrauded them. All settled privately. The documents detailed accusations spanning 20 years. Investment schemes, unfulfilled contracts, misrepresented partnerships, My father had apparently made a habit of exploiting trust for financial gain. Your sister, Lauren continued, appears to be following in his footsteps. She's named in 2 complaints at her previous workplace, accused of misleading customers into high-interest financing for purchases. And my mother? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Complicit, at minimum. Her name appears alongside your father's on most documents, including several bank accounts you probably don't know about. Each revelation felt like another brick added to a wall between my past and future. The parents I thought I knew, however flawed, were being replaced by strangers who operated with calculated selfishness. There's more, Lauren said. Your Uncle Gerald's new home purchase last year? The financing looks suspicious. The loan application lists income sources that don't match his known employment. Fraudulent loan application, I murmured, recognizing the implications. Lauren nodded. Potentially. And his fiancée, Jasmine Davis? She's more than just Jackson's sister. She works at his law firm as a paralegal, specializing in property transfers. The connections were becoming clearer, forming a web of deception with my house at the center. But Lauren's next discovery proved most valuable. Jackson Davis has been investigated twice by the Bar Association for ethical violations. Both cases involved manipulating property ownership through technical loopholes. Sound familiar? Exactly what they're trying with my house, I confirmed. Here's where it gets interesting, Lauren said, lowering her voice despite the empty tables around us. Davis represents several clients with properties managed by Lakeshore Venues. I frowned. That's a subsidiary of my company's hospitality division. Yes. And guess where Gerald and Jasmine are holding their wedding next month? The Peninsula at Lakeshore. The coincidence was too perfect. I thanked Lauren, promising to call with any questions after reviewing her full report. My mind was already forming connections, seeing opportunities where before I'd only seen betrayal. Morgan Wright's legal assessment came the following day. Their claim has technical merit due to a minor procedural error during closing, she explained. But it's far from a slam dunk. The fact that you've been making payments for years establishes clear ownership intent. So I have legal options? Several, she confirmed. But litigation would be lengthy and expensive, with no guaranteed outcome. Family court cases are unpredictable. I explained what Lauren had uncovered about my family's history of financial misconduct and the connections to Jackson Davis. Morgan's expression shifted from professional concern to strategic interest. This changes things. If we can prove conspiracy and intent to defraud, we could potentially file criminal charges, rather than just fighting the civil eviction. What would you need for that? Hard evidence of conspiracy, communications between parties, documentation of the scheme, proof of intent. I shared the notes and calculations I'd found in my father's desk. Good start, Morgan said, but not enough for criminal charges. We need more. Armed with this knowledge, I met with Anthony to develop a comprehensive strategy. His apartment became our war room, walls covered with notes, timelines, and connection maps. Your family thinks you're defeated, Anthony observed. Use that. Let them believe they've won while we gather evidence. The plan took shape gradually. Instead of fighting the eviction directly, I would appear to accept it, even accelerate my departure. Meanwhile, we would document everything, building a case not just to keep my house, but to expose their broader pattern of fraud. The emotional toll was immense. Nightmares plagued my sleep, recreating the birthday betrayal with new, cruel variations each time. Anxiety attacks ambushed me in quiet moments, chest tightening until breathing became conscious effort. A colleague recommended her therapist, and I began weekly sessions, learning techniques to manage the acute stress and process the profound loss, not just of my house, but of the family I thought I had. Work became unexpected sanctuary. My analytical role required focused attention that temporarily displaced personal turmoil. My team's normalcy and straightforward interactions contrasted sharply with the manipulation I'd experienced at home. 2 weeks into our investigation, Lauren provided another crucial piece of information. Uncle Gerald's wedding venue was not only managed by my company's subsidiary, but the specific location had been reserved using a corporate discount available only to employees or their immediate family. Someone had used my employee status without my knowledge. This revelation completed our strategic puzzle. The connection between my company, the venue, and my family's scheme created vulnerability they hadn't anticipated. They had unknowingly given me leverage by using my professional connections for their celebration. With Morgan's legal guidance and Lauren's investigative findings, I developed a methodical plan for appropriate response. Not revenge, but justice. Not emotional reaction, but strategic consequence. As the pieces fell into place, I found strength returning. The paralyzing shock of betrayal gradually transformed into focused determination. Whatever happened with the house, I would not allow my family's actions to go unanswered. They had taught me a painful lesson about trust. Soon, they would learn one about consequences. 3 weeks after my birthday, I returned home from work to find my key no longer worked in the front door lock. Standing on the porch of my own house, I called my father's cell phone. "We changed the locks," he answered without preamble. "For security purposes, I still have 10 days according to your eviction notice," I reminded him. "We decided to accelerate the timeline. Your things are in the garage. The code is the same." Before I could respond, he hung up. Taking a deep breath, I walked around to the garage and entered the code. Inside, I found cardboard boxes hastily filled with my belongings, books thrown in haphazardly, frames with broken glass, clothes unfolded and wrinkled. As I loaded boxes into my car, Allison pulled into the driveway in her new Audi, shopping bags visible in the passenger seat. "Oh, good. You're getting your stuff," she said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. "We need the garage space cleared out." "For what?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, despite the rage simmering beneath. "Dad's buying a boat. For Florida." She smiled brightly. "I might get certified as a sailing instructor. Always wanted to do that." "With my house money," I said. Her smile faltered slightly before returning with doubled intensity. "Family assets blaze. You should really accept that and move on." I said nothing, continuing to load my car as she went inside. The calculated cruelty of their actions still had the power to shock me, but I refused to show it. Let them think they'd broken me. Let them believe I had no fight left. The following day brought another confrontation. As I left work, my father was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his truck. "We need to talk," he said as I approached. "I think you've said everything necessary," I replied, moving toward my car. He stepped into my path. "Listen, your mother thinks we should offer you something. A small percentage from the house sale. 5%. The insult was almost laughable. 5% of my house. How generous. "Don't be ungrateful," he snapped. "We don't have to give you anything. What do you want, Dad? You've taken the house. What more could you possibly want from me?" His expression hardened. "I want you to sign a statement saying you won't contest the property transfer. Clean break. No legal challenges. And if I refuse, I have friends at Meridian Financial. One call suggesting you've been using company resources for personal gain could raise uncomfortable questions." The threat was clear. He would attempt to damage my professional reputation if I didn't cooperate. "I'll think about it," I said, needing to end the conversation before I lost control. 2 days, he replied. "Then we do this the hard way." As he drove away, I realized the stakes had just been raised. My family wasn't content with taking my house. They wanted to ensure I couldn't fight back, potentially targeting my career in the process. The next morning, I requested a meeting with James Holloway, senior partner at Meridian, and my direct supervisor. Better to address potential allegations proactively than reactively. James listened with increasing concern as I explained my situation, carefully outlining the facts without emotional coloring. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Your family is attempting to reclaim a house you purchased and have been paying the mortgage on for 5 years, based on a technicality in the closing documents?" "That's correct. And now your father is threatening to make false claims about your professional conduct if you contest it?" I nodded, bracing for potential fallout. James's response surprised me. "Blaze. Meridian has zero tolerance for fraud. That applies to false accusations as much as financial misconduct." He leaned forward. "If your father contacts anyone here with defamatory claims, it will only strengthen any legal case you pursue." The relief must have shown on my face, because James continued with unexpected personal warmth. "My own brother tried something similar with our parents' estate. Family financial disputes bring out the worst in people." He tapped his desk decisively. "You have Meridian's full support. In fact, our legal team might have resources that could help your case." That afternoon, James introduced me to Catherine Patel, head of Meridian's legal department. After hearing my situation, she offered the firm's extensive resources. "Property fraud intersects with our financial security interests," she explained. "The tactics your family and this Jackson Davis are employing represent exactly the kind of schemes we work to prevent." Catherine assigned a junior lawyer to collaborate with Morgan Wright, effectively doubling my legal support at no additional cost. Their combined expertise quickly identified additional vulnerabilities in my family's claim. Meanwhile, Lauren's investigation continued producing results. She discovered my parents had already listed the house with a realtor, scheduling an open house for the following weekend. They were moving faster than anticipated, eager to convert the property to cash before I could mount an effective response. A strategic opportunity presented itself when Meridian announced a temporary project in Detroit, requiring a financial analyst for 3 weeks. I volunteered immediately. Seeing advantages in physical distance from the situation, my family interpreted my departure from Chicago as defeat, a retreat from confrontation. Allison's social media posts became increasingly celebratory, sharing photos of furniture she planned to buy. With new family investments, they believed they'd won, which was exactly what I needed them to believe. From Detroit, I coordinated with Morgan, Catherine, and Lauren, building our case methodically. Meridian's resources provided access to financial records typically difficult to obtain, revealing a pattern of suspicious transactions between my father, Uncle Gerald, and Jackson Davis over the preceding 6 months. Lauren's surveillance documented meetings between all parties involved, including Jasmine, establishing clear conspiracy. Most importantly, we discovered they had already accepted an offer on my house, despite having no legal right to sell it. The investigation also uncovered something unexpected. Jackson Davis had used similar tactics with 3 other clients, helping family members exploit technical loopholes to seize properties from relatives. In each case, the property was quickly sold, and the proceeds divided among conspirators, including Davis himself, who received percentages beyond standard legal fees. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was a pattern of predatory behavior targeting family relationships for financial gain. Through Meridian's hospitality division, I discreetly researched Uncle Gerald's upcoming wedding. The peninsula at Lakeshore was our most exclusive venue, overlooking Lake Michigan with floor-to-ceiling windows and impeccable service. The event was scheduled for Saturday, 3 weeks away, with over 200 guests invited. After confirming my suspicions about how the venue had been booked, I contacted Lakeshore's management, explaining the situation in professional terms. They were understandably concerned about the fraudulent use of employee benefits and agreed to cooperate with any legal proceedings while maintaining the reservation to avoid tipping off my family. With Morgan and Catherine's guidance, I compiled a comprehensive case file documenting every aspect of the conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Written communications, financial transactions, witness statements, and surveillance photos established clear intent to defraud. The final piece came unexpectedly. A week before returning to Chicago, I received an email from Jasmine Davis. Subject line: "What they're doing isn't right." The message was brief but revealing. She had discovered the full extent of the scheme only recently and was uncomfortable with her role in it. While she wouldn't actively testify against her brother or fiancé, she provided crucial information. A recording of my parents discussing their plans with Jackson, explicitly acknowledging the house was rightfully mine, but pursuing the technical loophole anyway. "I'm still marrying Gerald," she wrote. "But I can't be part of stealing someone's home. This isn't why I went into law." The recording was exactly what we needed. Evidence of knowing intent that transformed a civil dispute into potential criminal fraud. Morgan immediately filed for an emergency injunction preventing the house sale, while Catherine coordinated with the district attorney's financial crimes division. Everything was in place. The only question remaining was timing. The wedding. Anthony suggested during our nightly strategy call, "If they want an audience for your humiliation, return the favor." It was perfect symmetry. They had orchestrated my birthday betrayal as public spectacle. Justice would arrive during their celebration, with witnesses of their own choosing. I returned to Chicago 3 days before the wedding, staying with Anthony, rather than revealing my presence. Final preparations were made, documents organized, and authorities notified. All that remained was execution. Uncle Gerald and Jasmine's wedding day would indeed be memorable, though not in the way they had planned. The peninsula at Lake Shore gleamed in late afternoon sunlight, its glass walls reflecting Lake Michigan's blue expanse. White chairs arranged in perfect rows faced an elaborate floral arch where Uncle Gerald would soon marry Jasmine Davis. Guests in formal attire mingled on the terrace, champagne glasses in hand, unaware of the reckoning about to unfold. Through employee entrance at the venue's rear, I entered unseen, directed by the manager, who had been briefed on our plan. Lauren Delaney waited inside, professional in a dark suit that allowed her to blend with the venue staff. "Everything's in place," she confirmed. "Morgan and Catherine are parked nearby with the documentation. The district attorney's representative will arrive separately to avoid drawing attention." From a service corridor with view of the main hall, I observed my family's arrival. My parents entered first. Mom resplendent in an expensive new dress. Dad unusually dapper in a tailored suit. They worked the room like celebrities, accepting congratulations and making introductions. Allison followed shortly after, wearing jewelry I recognized from her recent shopping sprees. She laughed loudly with friends, occasionally glancing at her phone to capture moments for social media. The carefree entitlement in her expression strengthened my resolve. Uncle Gerald appeared next, tension visible beneath his practiced smile. He checked his watch repeatedly, scanned doorways, clearly anticipating potential problems. He knew the foundation of his celebration was built on sand. Jasmine arrived last, beautiful but subdued. After her email, I understood her conflict, trapped between loyalty to her brother and discomfort with his methods. I harbored no ill will toward her, recognizing another victim of my family's manipulation. The ceremony proceeded with appropriate pomp. Vows were exchanged, rings presented, permission granted to kiss the bride. Guests applauded as the newly married couple walked back down the aisle, Uncle Gerald visibly relaxing as the ceremony concluded without incident. If only he knew the timing we had chosen. The reception began with cocktails and appetizers, photographers capturing carefully posed family groupings. Through the service corridor, I watched my parents speaking animatedly with older guests, gesturing toward lake views from the terrace. "They're talking about Florida properties," Lauren confirmed, having positioned herself within earshot, describing the waterfront home they're planning to purchase next month. The perfect moment arrived. As guests were seated for dinner, the MC announced initial toasts before the meal. inviting the father of the groom to speak first. My dad stood, raising his glass to begin what would undoubtedly be a self-congratulatory speech. I nodded to Lauren, who texted Morgan and Catherine. Within minutes, they entered through the main doors, accompanied by the district attorney's financial crimes investigator and 2 uniformed officers. The room fell silent as they approached the head table. Dad's toast faltered mid-sentence, his glass hovering in air as he recognized Morgan from our previous interaction. I stepped from the service corridor, walking calmly toward my family. The shock on their faces as they registered my presence was everything I had anticipated. Blaze, Mom gasped. "What are you doing here?" "I brought a wedding gift," I replied, my voice steady. "Something special, just like the birthday present you gave me." Morgan handed me the large envelope containing our documentation. With deliberate movements, I placed copies in front of my parents, Allison, Uncle Gerald, and finally Jackson Davis, who had risen halfway from his seat. "What's this?" Dad demanded, though his pallor suggested he already knew. "An eviction notice of sorts," I replied, though in legal terms, it's called a criminal complaint for conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false property claims, and attempted theft of assets exceeding $200,000. Jackson Davis reached for the documents, scanning them with growing alarm. "This is absurd. You can't prove intent." "Actually, we can," I responded, nodding to Catherine, who played a brief audio clip on her phone. My father's voice clearly stating they knew the house was legally mine, but were pursuing the loophole. Anyway, Jasmine's eyes widened. Recognizing the recording she had provided, the district attorney's investigator stepped forward. "Thomas and Sandra Turner, Allison Turner, Gerald Turner, and Jackson Davis. We have warrants for your arrest on multiple charges of fraud and conspiracy." Dad lunged toward me, face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little." The security team I had arranged intercepted him smoothly, preventing physical confrontation while maintaining professional decorum. "The house sale has been legally blocked," I continued calmly, addressing not just my family, but the stunned wedding guests. Additionally, liens have been placed on all assets acquired through fraudulent means, including recently purchased vehicles, jewelry, and property. Mom began crying, though whether from genuine emotion or calculated performance was impossible to determine. "How could you do this to your family?" "At a wedding? I learned about appropriate timing from professionals," I replied. "Birthday parties, weddings, whatever creates the most witnesses to someone else's humiliation." Uncle Gerald turned to Jasmine, betrayal in his eyes as he realized her potential role in our evidence collection. She met his gaze steadily. "I told you this was wrong, Gerald. I told all of you." The officers moved forward, reading rights, and preparing to escort my family members from the venue. Jackson Davis attempted legal maneuvering, citing procedural violations, but Catherine's preparation was flawless. Every document, every warrant, every procedural step had been executed with precision. As they were led toward the exit, Allison turned back, tears streaming down her face. "Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do now?" The question mirrored exactly what they had expected me to figure out after their betrayal. The symmetry was perfect, though I took no joy in her distress. "You'll figure it out," I replied, echoing her words from weeks earlier. Consider it a learning experience about the real world. Once they had been escorted out, I turned to address the remaining wedding guests, many of whom stood frozen in shock. "I apologize for the disruption. This was not about ruining a celebration, but preventing a criminal conspiracy from continuing. The reception can proceed for those who wish to stay." Jasmine approached hesitantly. "I'm sorry about all of this, Blaze. I didn't know the full extent when Gerald first introduced me to your family." "I know," I assured her. "Your information helped stop them from hurting others the same way." She nodded, glancing toward the door where her new husband had just been led away in handcuffs. Not exactly the wedding night I imagined. No, I agreed. But perhaps a more honest beginning than continuing a relationship built on lies. As I left the venue, walking past the lake where evening light painted the water gold, I felt no triumph or vindication, only a quiet certainty that justice had been served. Not through emotional vengeance, but through methodical exposure of truth. My family had taught me the cost of blind trust. Today, they learned about the price of betrayal. 1 year after the wedding day confrontation, I stood in the empty living room of what was once again legally recognized as my house. Sunlight streamed through windows, highlighting bare walls where family photos once hung. The echo of my footsteps against hardwood floors symbolized the closure I had finally achieved. The legal proceedings had been less dramatic than the arrest, but ultimately more satisfying. Faced with overwhelming evidence, my parents and sister accepted plea agreements to avoid lengthy trials. Each received probation and court-ordered restitution payments, though the financial penalties were largely symbolic. Their attempt to sell my house had failed, but the schemes had left them with little to recover. Jackson Davis faced more serious consequences, his law license suspended pending review by the Bar Association. The investigation expanded to include his other cases, revealing a pattern of exploitative practices targeting vulnerable family relationships. Uncle Gerald's situation proved complicated. The fraudulent loan application for his own home resulted in foreclosure proceedings, forcing him to downsize dramatically. His marriage to Jasmine lasted barely 3 months before she filed for annulment, citing material misrepresentation. I had met with Jasmine several times during the legal process, providing additional documentation she needed for her own case. Our interactions evolved from cautious cooperation to genuine respect, eventually becoming an unexpected friendship based on shared experience with my family's manipulation. They almost turned me into someone I'm not, she confessed during one of our coffee meetings. I was starting to believe their justifications, that family loyalty meant participating in taking what wasn't theirs. I understood completely. For years, I had accepted their definition of family obligation as one-directional sacrifice. The house had been returned to me through court judgment, but living there proved impossible. Too many memories, too much betrayal embedded in its walls. After months of consideration, I listed it for sale, working with a reputable agent who understood its complicated history. The housing market had continued its upward trend, and the sale closed quickly, providing enough profit to finally think about my own future without financial constraints. The healing process began slowly, with twice-weekly therapy sessions helping me process both acute betrayal and lifelong patterns of exploitation. The therapist recommended a support group for adults recovering from family estrangement, where I found others with similar experiences. Family isn't always defined by blood, said Maria, a group member whose siblings had stolen her inheritance. Sometimes it's defined by who treats you with genuine respect and care. This perspective helped reshape my understanding of what family could be. The friends who had supported me throughout the ordeal, Anthony's unwavering loyalty, Morgan's dedicated advocacy, even James's professional protection, demonstrated more authentic care than my biological family had shown in years. Work provided another source of stability and growth. Rather than damaging my career, the experience enhanced my professional reputation. James offered a significant promotion, citing the analytical precision and emotional intelligence I demonstrated throughout the crisis. "You handled an impossible situation with integrity," he told me. Those are exactly the qualities Meridian values in leadership. My new apartment downtown represented more than just housing. It symbolized personal freedom. For the first time, every decision, from furniture selection to wall color, reflected only my preferences. No compromises for others' needs. No sacrifices for family demands. The most profound lessons emerged gradually as anger and hurt began to subside. I learned that genuine care never demands continual self-sacrifice, that boundaries aren't selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships, that sometimes walking away preserves more than staying would save. Most importantly, I recognized that my worth was never dependent on what I provided to others. The conditional acceptance my family had offered was not love but transaction, a fundamental misunderstanding of what family should mean. Distant relatives, hearing about the situation through inevitable family grapevine, reached out tentatively. Aunt Diana, from my mother's side, visited when business brought her to Chicago, offering perspective without judgment. "Your parents were always complicated," she acknowledged over dinner. "What they did was inexcusable, but perhaps not incomprehensible, given their history. Your grandfather treated your father similarly, taking without gratitude, demanding without giving. This context didn't excuse their actions, but helped me understand the generational patterns I had narrowly escaped perpetuating. With portion of the house sale proceeds, I established a small foundation providing legal assistance to victims of financial exploitation, particularly cases involving family members. The foundation partnered with Morgan's firm, offering resources to those who might otherwise remain trapped in abusive financial relationships. My birthday, once a painful reminder of betrayal, became a personal celebration of independence. Each year on that date, I took the day off work, spending it entirely on activities that brought joy and growth. A tangible reminder that my life was now truly my own. Perhaps the most unexpected development came 6 months after selling the house. While volunteering at a financial literacy workshop sponsored by my foundation, I met Naomi, a corporate attorney who specialized in ethical business practices. Our conversation moved easily from professional topics to personal values, her directness and integrity immediately apparent. Our relationship developed cautiously, both of us carrying past experiences that taught the value of careful trust. But unlike my family's conditional acceptance, Naomi's affection came without demands, her respect without requirement for sacrifice. "What happened to you was theft disguised as family obligation," she observed after hearing my full story. "Real love never keeps score or extracts payment." Looking back on the journey from betrayal to recovery, I realized the true victory wasn't in legal vindication or financial restoration, though both mattered. The real triumph was breaking generational patterns of toxic relationship, creating space for authentic connection built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The experience cost me the family I thought I had, but gave me clarity about what family should actually mean. Not blood ties that justify exploitation, but chosen bonds that encourage growth. Not relationships that demand sacrifice, but connections that offer mutual support. In losing what I thought was mine, I gained what I truly needed: freedom to build a life defined by my own values rather than others' expectations. So have you ever discovered that someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? How did you handle that realization? Let me know in the comments below. If you found value in my story, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about navigating life's unexpected challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better than you imagined possible.